I'm straight, but I'm falling for my gay best friend. I really want to tell him. I always perceived myself to be straight, but when my best friend Joey and I moved in, that all changed. He gave me flowers as a graduation present, and I barely noticed it myself, but this was the first time he made my heart skip a beat. As time went on, I started unintentionally rubbing my leg against his during a movie, or I'd catch myself staring at him. I myself hadn't even noticed just how much I really liked him, until when I was in the middle of cooking, and he came up behind me. He leaned his head over and placed his chin on my shoulder, then asked me if the food was almost ready. It was such a small thing, but I remember at that very moment, the realization that I really wanted him fully dawned on me. I thought about it that night, and figured that I was being stupid. I didn't have a crush on Joey. I avoided him for the next few days, and he of course noticed. He asked me if everything was okay, and I felt a wave of adrenaline when he did. I made up a lie about work, and said it's just the stress, and he thankfully believed it. I stopped acting distant from Joey immediately after, but still tried to bury the feelings that had surfaced. I tried to rationalize the way I felt in every way possible, thinking it could be the fact we're roommates or something. I really tried to keep Joey away from my mind, but the next week I came home from work, and I was met at the door to Joey cooking dinner for us. I looked at the pan, and saw that he was cooking my favorite steak and potatoes. I never had one of my other friends make me dinner before, and subconsciously, my feelings for Joey grew. He then said that he handled the clothes that I left in the washer. I walked into my room, and saw them folded neatly on my bed. If I had a love language, it would easily be acts of affection. He knew me almost better than I'd known myself. We ate dinner together and watched a horror movie. Soon after, we went our separate ways into our bedrooms to go to bed. The next day, we got all the boys together and went surfing. One of our friends' parents owned a beach house about an hour away from my house, so we all hung out there almost every weekend. As I was getting my board and putting it in the car, Joey ran outside with a backpack. He handed me a can. "You forgot your sunscreen," he said. His eyes were a bluish green and sparkled in the sunlight. I thanked him and asked if he was ready to go. He agreed, and we headed to our friend's beach house. On the ride there, we played our shared playlists and sang songs at the top of our lungs. This was some of the most fun I'd had in weeks. We played throwbacks, newest hits, you name it. Being around him made me feel like I was in a movie. When we got there, we changed into our swim shorts. I'd seen Joey without a shirt thousands of times before, but today it felt different. I could feel myself blushing every time I looked in his direction. What was happening to me? He had a bronze tan, and his beach blonde hair waved in the wind as he surfed. I was paying so much attention to him that I lost my footing and fell straight into a huge wave. Joey swam over to me to help and poked fun at me. He jokingly asked if I had been drinking. I said, apparently, and laughed. Over the next few weeks, my feelings for Joey grew stronger. While I was at work, I was constantly distracted. My mind was filled with thoughts of Joey, his laugh, his smile, the way he always squirted the ketchup bottle on a napkin before putting it on his sandwich to get rid of the, in his words, ketchup pee. I would think about how he hated watching horror movies, but would watch them because I liked them. He started cooking more for me, and was overall the perfect partner. I had never felt this way about a guy before, and it was hard. I didn't have a problem with gay people, but I'd never seen myself feeling this way for another man. When we were home alone, I would try to sit closer to him on the couch. I noticed that I enjoyed being in his personal bubble more often than not. The tension that I felt between us had gotten stronger. When before I could maintain eye contact with Joey, I now felt like I had butterflies in my stomach whenever he looked at me. I remember one day we both reached for the remote at the same time, and feeling his hand brush up against mine sent a rush of dopamine through me. I felt a flutter in my chest and said, "My bad, bro." I didn't know how much longer I could keep up this act. I knew that I was straight. I had only been with girls. There wasn't anyone in my family who was gay, and I wondered where these new feelings had come from. I felt a mix of emotions. I was confused about my sexuality, while simultaneously feeling a burning desire for my best friend. I was upset for a while thinking about the possibility of me and Joey, and every outcome seemed like it ended terribly. I needed to take the edge off. I met up with a friend to get some mushrooms off of him. I didn't do them often, but I was going through it. That night while I was on them, I was sitting on my couch staring at my ceiling fan. I started feeling happy again. My body was tingling. I felt like I could move a mountain. The whole world looked like it did when I was a kid. Then shortly after, I started feeling everything at once. My feelings for Joey only amplified, and the feeling of denial in myself grew as well. I battled it head on. I felt so many things at once and nothing at all, and that's when it hit me. I realized if I truly wanted to experience happiness, I would have to accept love that fit inside the box, outside the box, and learn to love the box. Once I fully understood how to accept love in all forms, the feelings for Joey didn't seem like a part of me that I had to deny anymore. It felt like a weight had been lifted. The next day, I took out the trash and made a sandwich for me and Joey. I wasn't the best cook, so I decided to return the favor this way. I couldn't possibly mess up a sandwich. Joey was still asleep, so I woke him up and handed him the sandwich with a flower attached to it. He seemed shocked when I woke him up, but he didn't reject it. We sat in his bed and ate the sandwiches. I made them a little dry, and the proportions of meat and cheese were way off, but Joey seemed to appreciate it nonetheless. Over the next few weeks, I started leaving him sweet notes near his nightstand and around the house for him to find. Every time he'd find one, Joey would thank me for the praise. praise. I then started planning our hangouts to spots that he enjoyed, instead of only the ones that I would enjoy. I surprised him with concert tickets to his favorite band. Joey asked how I got those tickets because he thought they were sold out, and I told him not to worry about it. I knew a guy that my dad used to work with. He works at the venue where they're having the concert, and he hooked me up with 2 tickets. I wish you could have seen the way his face lit up. He ran over to me and pulled me into a big hug. I hugged him back and rested my head on his shoulder. I felt a surge of energy rush through me, and at the back of my head, I wondered if Joey felt the same way about me. As the weeks progressed, our bond grew stronger, and I didn't know that was possible. We'd been best friends for years before I caught feelings for him, and I realized how close we were getting. I wanted to know if Joey felt the same passion that I had for him. One night we were driving back home from hanging out with our friends. The night sky was clear, and the moon looked beautiful. Joey started talking about his hopes and dreams for the future, and I figured that I should share the same. In that instant, I felt so close to him, yet so far away. I wanted to kiss him, but I was too scared to ruin the moment. I sat there and listened to him as he drove us home. He made me feel safe and secure. His presence was calming, and I felt that I could be 100% my authentic self around him. I was just afraid that he didn't feel the same way about me. The next night we sat in the living room once again, having a deep conversation. We were talking about our childhood memories and laughed together. I recounted the time he jumped off the mantelpiece and landed through the coffee table. He said that he still had glass in his legs to this day and laughed. He then reminded me of the time I skated down the steepest hill in our neighborhood on rollerblades and landed in a bush. How could I forget it? He then asked if I remembered when I let him have my favorite Transformer toy, and he lost it. I agreed. Man, it took us days to find it. I was so angry with him back then. Things took a more serious turn. He then asked me what was the thing I was most afraid of losing. Joey was the first thing that popped into my mind, but I couldn't say that to him. I told him I was afraid of losing my mind. He said that was a great answer, and that his answer was me. My heart jumped, and I smiled at him. Then he continued to say that I was the best bro he'd ever had. My heart shattered. The thought of telling him how I felt was further away now more than ever. I agreed with him while gathering the pieces of my heart on the inside. I felt immediately friend-zoned, but before I could let these emotions dwell, I saw Joey getting closer. My heart raced. He kissed my forehead. I was shocked and smiled at him. I felt euphoric. I knew then that I was in love with him. The next few weeks, I felt as giddy as a schoolgirl. I continued cooking for Joey and even learned how to make a few of his favorite meals. I was slowly, but surely, getting better with my cooking skills, and Joey gave me props on it. This felt so rewarding. I picked a ton of flowers from around our apartment. They were all different colors and different flowers. I wrapped them up with a string and presented the bouquet to Joey. His eyes lit up, and he held his mouth. He loved it, and put them in a vase. He expressed how grateful he was for them and hugged me. I continued picking little flowers to surprise him here and there. I left them on his pillow to wake up to. He loved it every time. Soon, me and Joey were spending weekends with each other when we used to always hang out at the beach with our friends. They began to notice and started questioning us, and we would just say we had plans with other people or that we were tired, but I'm sure they started catching on. On those weekends, we would walk around the park together and enjoy nature. One time my hand brushed up against Joey's on accident, and he looked back at me, smiled, and grabbed it. I felt my heart melt. We walked through the park together, hand in hand. Each day with Joey, my heart felt lighter, and I was starting to feel more comfortable fully displaying my affection towards him. That evening after dinner, we went outside to sit on the porch together and watch the sunset. I finally built up the courage to tell him how I felt. I told Joey that I had a confession and to hear me out. He agreed, looking concerned, but as I poured my feelings out, his concern turned to shock. I told him I'd loved him for a long time, and that he was the only person who understood me on such a deep level. I told him how much I value our friendship, and that I believed he was the only person for me. I told him how much the little things he did for me meant to me, and I told him that I wanted to be more than just friends. He had tears in his eyes and said, "Of course." He told me that he had felt the same way for a long time, but he didn't know how to tell me since I was straight. He said he didn't want to ruin our friendship because he valued it just as much as me. He said he was just as afraid as I was to say anything, even though my actions showed that I was interested. I went in for a hug and squeezed him tight. He cried on my shoulder, and I embraced him. We sat there in silence for a long time, holding each other while the sun set before us. I felt a sense of relief and joy. When he finally released me, I kissed him, and we enjoyed the rest of the sunset hand in hand. From then on, our relationship was official. We told all of our family and friends about us. Most had already said they knew because of how we were acting. Our other friend Ben said he had bets on us, and he was ready to cash in. I was so happy that we built this relationship on a pillar of friendship first. It made our love for one another deeper than anything I had felt before. We continued life together just as we did before. We laughed and danced together. We sang and enjoyed each other's company. Joey taught me that love was so unexpected and beautiful. He had opened my mind up to things I hadn't known and feelings I hadn't felt before. Years later, I am so grateful that I have a partner that started out as my best friend.